So how do we define a project? How do we get a good research question and write a research proposal? Well, we go back to basics and we look at the variables in a research question. So many experimental types of research or observational types of research will need an independent variable. So this is the applied or test or control conditions or the treatment or intervention. So think of independent as the intervention. They both begin with I and N. And then the dependent variable is what you're measuring. So this is sometimes called the outcome variable or the response that you're measuring. And then be clear about your sample and setting and how you select your either patients or participants or animals or even your materials. And for studies that need samples of animals and humans, you need to have a power calculation. This is quite strict now, so all funders will ask for a power calculation, as well as define your controls and control treatments. And then finally, the study design is important because there are different types of evidence level, and your study design will determine whether your study and results are between the independent and dependent variables. You'll use statistical tests that you nominate beforehand as part of your data management plan. So you can't do the statistics afterwards just to find significant results. You have to plan it beforehand in a statistical analysis plan. Now, in the first slide, we saw that the person had written, we need money to show that something doesn't work. So actually that's the null hypothesis, and it's a very odd way to put the research question. But when we're testing statistically, you convert whatever your research question is and hypothesis into the null. So that's when you do say, oh, we're testing that A and B don't have an effect. That's why you use statistical tests. But in your research proposal, you wouldn't put no effect as your actual research question. So you'll actually have a research hypothesis. You actually predict a direction of how you think the results will go, and you base this on past theory and past studies. In the statistical test, this will be called the alternative hypothesis, and it can be one-tailed or two-tailed. So ask a statistician to help you. And remember, I said you need a power calculation to calculate the number of samples, and there is a useful online power calculator at the link here, and we'll send you some notes with this link so you can work out the sample number needed for the percentage power, statistical power of your study. Another thing to think of is the type of study. We said they have different evidence levels. So decide early on what type of study you will do, because this will determine the type of data you collect and how you present your work in your proposal. There's qualitative, which is subjective or text, not to do with numbers. There's quantitative, which is numerical data. And then you can do a mixture called mixed methods. For hypothesis testing studies using statistics, those are explanatory studies. But you might be doing an exploratory, and it could be exploratory qualitative, and that's hypothesis generating. So you won't have a hypothesis to test at the beginning. In silico means computer theoretical modeling studies. In vitro is in the lab, and in vivo is in animals or humans. For different types of study, there will be different expectations for the procedure followed. So you could do a theoretical study, which leads to basic fundamental research, and then translational, and then applied research. So you could be doing part or all of that pathway. If you're preparing something, whether it's a chemical or sample or a method, you'd prepare, then isolate something, purify it, then characterize it. Or you would study a whole group and describe the characteristics of the whole group before splitting up the groups into subgroups, and then having a final model that you'll refine. Or for qualitative surveys, you'd interview people, transcribe and translate the results, and then code and analyze the themes and the text, and then come up with a model at the end. So depending on the type of study, there will be an accepted flow of what researchers, what funders will be looking for. For medical diagnostic tests, usually we look at the true positive, true negative, and then false positive, false negative. And then for clinical studies, there's a evidence pyramid, with the bottom being the lowest level of evidence as case series and case reports, and then going up in evidence quality, there's cross-sectional studies, case control studies, cohort studies, RCTs or randomized controlled trials, and then systematic reviews where you pull the data and you could do a meta-analysis to get an overall answer. The bottom ones before the RCT are observational, and the top ones are experimental, which is why it gives stronger evidence. And below systematic review is known as primary research, and then systematic reviews are secondary research.